Even though April is over, honestly, I don't think I'm quite ready to move on from the Tortured Poets department just yet, especially when it comes to Fortnight, because I've actually been sitting on a few theories about this song that I really, really think are worth sharing. In this video, we're going to break things down into 3 parts. First, we'll analyze the lyrics of Fortnight and explore it as kind of a what-if scenario playing out inside Taylor's head. And don't worry, I've got receipts. Second, we'll dive into a possible trio of songs, similar to Cardigan, August, and Betty from Folklore, that I think complete the story Fortnight is trying to tell. And finally, we'll take a closer look at the music video, not just because it's visually stunning, which it totally is, but because I genuinely think it reveals Taylor's internal world for this album, and even has subtle nods to every song on TTPD. Yes, really. Let's get into it. Fortnight drops us straight into this vivid what-if scenario, right? Taylor Swift herself has hinted that this song is basically a speculative narrative, an imagined story about 2 ex-lovers reconnecting under imperfect circumstances. And seriously, what if you and the love of your life never actually ended up together? What if you were only ever meant to long for each other from a distance? That's exactly how I interpret it. We have 2 people who were once deeply in love, but now they're stuck in separate lives, looking back on a brief, passionate, and impossible affair. Even the very first line captures how those stolen days felt eternal. It's a dramatic premise. The woman is trapped in an unhappy marriage, and the man she had this powerful connection with is also married. They share this intense, secret fling. I touched you for only a fortnight, and then go back to pretending everything's fine. Now, I know a lot of fans believe Fortnight was intentionally placed as the first track on the album because it represents the 14th night, literally picking up where Midnight's and its story of 13 sleepless nights left off. But I actually want to take a slightly different route. Personally, I think Fortnight begins exactly where the 1975's album, Being Funny in a Foreign Language, ends. That album closes with the song, When We Are Together, which is about 2 lovers who keep colliding at different points in time but never quite manage to stay together. And the only conversation left lingering between them is small talk, sweaters, cows, the weather. It perfectly captures how 2 people can once mean everything to each other. But now, all that's left is polite distance. Just surface-level chatter that hides an entire shared history only they can really feel. So when Fortnight gives us that lyric, ask about the weather, it honestly feels like the same story, just told from the other side. Seriously, pause the video and check it out. Then definitely drop your thoughts down in the comments. I would genuinely love to know what you think about this connection. And hey, if you've made it this far with me, why not subscribe too? I mean, we're already this deep down the rabbit hole together. Might as well make it official, right? What makes Fortnight so powerful, in my opinion, is how it explores both characters' emotional states and the painful contrast between the lives they live outwardly and everything they're feeling internally. Right from the first verse, Taylor sets the scene of the narrator's despair. She describes feeling abandoned and numb. Those first 2 lines immediately give us a glimpse of a woman who's kinda on the edge, someone who's been emotionally neglected and is basically drowning her sorrows. It definitely hints at how empty her marriage has become. Then, by the time the chorus hits, we see how meeting this old flame totally ignites something in her. It's like for those 2 weeks, they lived entirely in their own little world, running freely and completely lost in love, but reality creeps back in pretty quickly with the next line about the weather. Now, after their affair, these 2 have to revert back to polite small talk, acting like casual acquaintances. Imagine sharing this secret, passionate escape and then being forced to chat about the weather like nothing ever happened. That contrast between the intensity of their true feelings and the bland, cordial facade they maintain is genuinely heart-wrenching. It perfectly illustrates the theme of outward appearances versus inner despair. They might look like normal, friendly, good neighbors on the outside, but internally, they're definitely not over it. One of the most striking lyrics in the whole song addresses this dissonance head-on. Now you're in my backyard, turned into good neighbors. Your wife waters flowers, I want to kill her. Taylor doesn't sugarcoat the narrator's tumultuous emotions here. In her mind, seeing the man's wife doing something as innocently domestic as watering flowers sparks this violent pang of jealousy. Now, obviously, that line isn't meant literally. It's hyperbole, meant to show just how intense her inner turmoil really is. Outwardly, the man's life looks picture perfect, a loving wife tending the garden, but inwardly, he and the narrator are drowning in regret and longing. The narrator's dramatic, I want to kill her, reveals just how emotionally wrecked she is by the entire situation. It's uncomfortable, it's dark, and that's exactly the point. This song lives in those extremes of feeling. Taylor herself has described the Tortured Poets department as a very fatalistic album, with very hyperbolic, dramatic things to say. Lines like, I love you, it's ruining my life, and these violent fantasies of a secret affair, They're intentionally over the top, conveying the life or death urgency of the narrator's love. Both characters are basically miserable without each other, and Taylor uses this kind of dramatic language to make us feel every ounce of that devastation. It's also worth noting that Fortnight is actually a duet. Post Malone is featured on the track, lending vocals as the male counterpart in the story. His appearance on the song almost feels like casting an actor in a role. Through him, we can sense that the man is just as broken by these events as she is. And the lyric, "I touched you," repeated like that. It almost sounds like he's in disbelief that it even happened, lamenting that it was only once or only for that short amount of time. This dual narration is really powerful. We're not just hearing one side of the story, but two lovers echoing each other's pain. Post Malone's emotive, slightly raspy tone adds this kind of weary sadness to the male character. And even though the song's characters are fictional, I genuinely think Taylor chose Post very deliberately here. Now, here's something else I want to point out. Personally, I don't think Fortnight directly references that brief relationship between Taylor and Maddie back in 2023. Instead, I think it was more of a what-if scenario that played out in her head over all those preceding years after 2014. She was with someone else, and so was he. And emotionally speaking, Fortnight feels like it's playing out a fantasy. Like, what if we never end up in a relationship and all we did was fantasize about running off together? Despite those possible real-life nods, Fortnight mostly stays within its own self-contained little world. And honestly, I love that the song doesn't even try to resolve anything. It just leaves us hanging with this heavy sense of unresolved longing, lingering in the air like smoke. By the time we hit the final chorus and outro, there's definitely no happy ending. The narrator's stuck in a marriage with someone who's cheating on her. But what's interesting is that she's also kind of casually ignoring the fact that she's cheating too. It's messy, you know? So, in this alternate reality where she never finds the one, she ends up sad, alone, and stuck with a husband who doesn't really care. Everybody in this story feels a little bit guilty, and honestly, they're all a little bit broken too. In the end, we're left with these two people who shared their own little forever, but only for a fortnight, just 2 weeks. And now they're back to living lies. She's trapped in a loveless marriage, he's with someone who'll probably never really know him, and both of them are quietly carrying around this grief for something that almost was. That's what Fortnight is really about, unresolved longing. These two people got a glimpse of a life they desperately wanted but could never fully have. And Taylor just makes us sit right in the middle of that heartbreak. It's actually a really bold way to open an album. It feels like an entire novella packed into 3 minutes. And by writing it with this much empathy and emotional detail, Taylor pulls us straight into the world of what-ifs and roads not taken, and how those things can haunt us long after the moment has passed. Now, one of the coolest things about Taylor's storytelling on the Tortured Poets department is how some songs seem to connect with each other. Just like on Folklore, which famously had that trilogy of Cardigan, August, and Betty forming a 3-part narrative, I suspect Fortnight has its own companion pieces too. I actually think that Fortnight, Fresh Out the Slammer, and Florida form a narrative trio telling one continuous story at different stages. Listening to these tracks together, they really do feel like chapters in the same saga. Maybe a reflection, then a confrontation, and finally an escape within a single ill-fated love affair. Fortnight comes first in this trio, and I see it as the emotional catalyst for everything that follows. In British terms, a fortnight literally means 2 weeks, and in the song, she's reminiscing possibly about that short period, and it totally awakens feelings she hasn't felt in years. There's this rush of passion and possibility packed into just those 14 days. From the lyrics, you can really feel how deeply those stolen moments affected her. In just a fortnight, she experiences forever in miniature, a flash of joy that makes everything before and after feel completely pale by comparison. But once those 2 weeks end, reality comes crashing back in. Both the narrator and her lover have existing commitments, a spouse, a life elsewhere, and they're forced to return to them. Now they're just turned into good neighbors, making awkward small talk about the weather, pretending nothing ever happened. This abrupt return to normalcy leaves the narrator reeling with longing and regret. She got this taste of real love and can't simply forget about it. Every mundane day that follows feels, as the lyrics go, like Monday stuck in an endless February. Just a dreary routine completely drained of the color she briefly knew. Her heart is basically still stuck back in that fortnight, replaying all those memories again and again. The emotions in Fortnight are incredibly raw and even dark at times. The narrator's yearning gradually turns into this deep frustration and anger at her situation. One of the most striking things here is that she has these almost violent flashes of bitterness, especially about the situations they respectively ended up having. Those lines perfectly convey just how extreme her inner turmoil really is. Obviously, we can interpret these lines as hyperbolic or symbolic. I mean, she's probably not literally going to murder anyone, but the sentiment behind them is crystal clear. She feels trapped and just absolutely enraged by the unfairness of it all. She's stuck with a cheating husband she doesn't love, while the man she genuinely loves is out of reach, trapped in his own marriage. By the end of the song, the narrator is desperate for some kind of escape. She even starts fantasizing about a plan. It's a wistful, almost delusional hope for a clean break. Fortnight ends on this note of longing and unresolved tension. The narrator has been awakened. She knows deep down she can't just keep pretending everything's fine. This short-lived romance has lit a fuse, emotionally speaking, and now something has got to give. If Fortnight lit that fuse, then Fresh Out the Slammer is the explosion. It's where the narrator finally acts on that desperate need for change. Listening to this song, I picture the narrator deciding to completely leave her current situation behind, breaking free from the prison of her old life. Even the title itself, Fresh Out the Slammer, suggests someone who's just been released from jail. In a literal sense, it might hint that she actually did something drastic, maybe the angry fantasies from Fortnight turning into real actions, and then paid a price for it. But even if we just take it metaphorically, the idea stays the same. She's done her time in a bad situation, and now she's finally free. Right away, the tone of the song is all determination and forward motion. The narrator has a newfound resolve, one that was forged by all the yearning and regret we saw in Fortnight. She refuses to stay trapped any longer. It's almost like she's saying, "Look, I've served my sentence in unhappiness, and now I know exactly who I need and where I truly belong." He's the very first person she wants to run to, now that she's finally out. This is her big break for freedom. Maybe leaving her unfaithful husband, or perhaps just shedding her old identity entirely and rushing toward real love. All that regret and anger from the first song gets channeled into this bold action here. She honestly sounds almost giddy at the idea of starting over. In the second verse, she talks about burning her past and also learning from it. That line tells us she's learned from the painful fallout of the affair. She already lost her baby once, and it practically destroyed her. Now she's certain she won't ever make that mistake again. There's even this image of letters she wrote and warnings from friends that she ignored, implying that during her imprisonment, possibly just a stifling home life, she was holding on to hope. Maybe she was writing to this lover, planning her return even when others told her she was crazy. It's as if she's been mentally preparing for this escape ever since the affair ended. The emotional heart of Fresh Out the Slammer is all about hope and reunion. In the triumphant outro, the narrator describes going back to the places they once cherished. The house where you still wait up. The park where we used to sit on children's swings wearing imaginary rings. You can feel just how vividly she's been dreaming about this reunion and how much it means to finally break free. By the end of Fresh Out the Slammer, there's definitely a sense of victory. But it also feels tense, like there's something just under the surface. The narrator has essentially torn her whole world apart just to be with this person. Sure, it's romantic, but there's an underlying edge here. She's running on pure adrenaline, declaring that everything's going to be all right now. But you can't help but wonder, what exactly are the consequences of this grand escape going to be? Even the title itself hints that maybe some rules, or even laws, were broken along the way, whether literally or just the unwritten laws of society and marriage. She's fresh out and eager to start anew, but reality might still catch up eventually. And honestly, that's exactly where the third part of this trio comes in. The come down after the high, the chaos after the leap. In this final installment, Florida, the narrative takes a pretty wild turn. If Fresh Out the Slammer was that ecstatic break for freedom, Florida is the messy, completely unhinged aftermath. Honestly, this song feels like an escape fantasy that's just completely gone off the rails. The characters, our narrator and presumably her lover, now reunited, actually attempt that Florida plan hinted at way back in Fortnight. They run off to the Sunshine State seeking refuge, hoping to flee the emotional fallout of everything that's happened. But instead of paradise, they find themselves plunging straight into chaos. Right from the start, the song's tone is frenzied and even ironic. Taylor describes Florida as one hell of a drug, basically a place people go to forget their problems, often indulging in vice. Clearly, this isn't some calm, well-thought-out plan for a happy new life. It's a desperate grab at oblivion. She's completely overwhelmed by guilt, regret, and maybe even real trouble that's chasing them, and she's looking to drown it all out in the swampy heat of Florida. There's even this underlying sense that they might literally be hiding from consequences. It's almost like they're thinking, if we go far enough, none of our mistakes can catch us. Musically and lyrically, Florida is bright and disorienting. You can practically feel the sunstroke and the moral hangover. The song also brings in Florence Welch, of Florence plus the Machine, for a haunting second verse, which deepens this sense of madness. In that verse, the narrator, or maybe a voice in her head, calls herself a hurricane. It's such a vivid image, showing just how self-destructive things have become. She barricades herself in the bathroom with a bottle of wine, clearly spiraling out, using alcohol and reckless behavior to cope with everything she's feeling. It's definitely a far cry from the hopeful reunions we saw in the previous song. Throughout Florida, there's an atmosphere of neon-lit doom. The characters are free, yes, but free to totally make a mess of things. The narrator also owns up to her flaws here more openly than ever. "They said I was a cheat, I guess it must be true," she mutters, acknowledging the infidelity scandal that set off this whole journey. She's finally confronting the fact that running away doesn't erase what happened. If anything, Florida just amplifies all their issues. It's basically the big dramatic crescendo of the downward spiral. Every regret they've tried to bury inevitably starts surfacing again in this chaotic environment. The song's wild energy and ironic celebration of Florida's seedy side make it feel almost like a fever dream, like driving off the cliff laughing. By the end of the song, the narrative doesn't tie everything up in a neat bow. Instead, we're left right in the eye of the storm. These lovers have chased their freedom all the way into a sun-soaked wasteland of escapism. It's thrilling and tragic all at once. In a way, this final song completes their downward spiral. What began as just a taste of love in Fortnight led to the impulsive break for freedom in Fresh Out the Slammer, and finally ends up in an unraveling of control here in Florida. That escape they dreamed about? Well, it's turned into something more like an almost nihilistic frenzy. Now, if the song Fortnight tells one story through its lyrics, the official music video tells another story entirely, one that adds totally new layers and mood to the track. Instead of literally depicting an affair between neighbors, the video creates this surreal gothic narrative that symbolizes the song's emotions, while also tying it neatly into the wider TTPD universe of the album. It's a pretty striking contrast, actually. The lyrics are grounded in secret meetups and longing glances, but the video plunges us straight into a black and white, quasi-Victorian fever dream. The tone shifts from personal heartache to something more like a psychological thriller. Yet, amazingly, it all clicks together perfectly, enhancing the meaning of both the song and the album as a whole. Let's break down some key elements of the Fortnight music video and how they reveal a different facet of this story. First off, the video's aesthetic and setting immediately signal that we're definitely not in literal Kansas anymore. Taylor appears as this mentally tormented patient in what looks like some kind of 19th century asylum or laboratory. The music video is shot in this moody black and white style, with Taylor decked out in elaborate Victorian Gothic costumes. Her character is subjected to strange experiments by two men in lab coats, played by none other than Ethan Hawke and Josh Charles, who famously portrayed students in the classic film Dead Poets Society. This casting is actually a super clever Easter egg. Taylor even cheekily referred to them as colleagues from down the hall, the Dead Poets, in one of her captions. In the video, Hawke and Charles come off like these mad scientists or doctors, closely observing and manipulating Taylor's character. Meanwhile, Post Malone appears as well, portraying her lover in these dreamlike flashbacks or fantasies. Honestly, the whole setup feels like a short art house film, part horror, part fantasy, part period drama. It's a completely different narrative canvas than just married neighbors having an affair, but through symbolism, it brilliantly conveys the emotional essence of Fortnight. So, what's actually going on beneath the surface of these visuals? Essentially, the video externalizes all the internal turmoil of the song. Instead of just showing a woman quietly crying in her kitchen or exchanging longing glances over a fence, which would be a literal take on the lyrics, the video goes for metaphor. Heartbreak has basically made our heroine mentally unhinged, and she's confined in this sort of tortured poets department, a place reserved for broken hearts and brilliant madness. The black and white cinematography and Victorian setting give the whole thing a timeless, tragic quality. It's as if the video's saying that the pain in Fortnight is like one of those classic Gothic stories, where a woman goes mad with grief or passion, think Miss Havisham from Dickens, or the kind of intense, haunting vibes you get from a Bronte novel. There's even a bit of a Frankenstein or Poor Things vibe, especially with Taylor's character being experimented on. Actually, a lot of fans picked up on parallels to the film Poor Things, a story about a woman resurrected and controlled by male doctors. And that totally aligns with what we see here. Taylor's character is poked and prodded as she struggles to cope with memories of love. This visual metaphor adds another layer of commentary too, maybe about how society or other people try to fix a woman who's overwhelmed by heartbreak, or how she's made to feel alienated and labeled crazy for the depth of her sorrow. It's really just a dramatic amplification of the song's core feelings. Throughout the video, almost every prop and detail is symbolic. Definitely not random set dressing. Honestly, it's like a mini movie that contains the entire Tortured Poets Department universe inside it. There are so many subtle little elements hidden in this music video that hint at each of the 31 songs on the album, like the typewriter for the title track, the literal key symbolizing fresh out the slammer, or the miracle move-on drug, which shows up both in Fortnight and Florida as the forget him pill. And, of course, the black dog representing the black dog. I mean, seriously, the references go on and on. But did you manage to catch all of them? Definitely let me know in the comments which ones you spotted, and also which ones you missed. Maybe we can figure out those missing pieces together. All these elements, and there are even more, like those Dead Poets Society references explicitly tying into the album's title and the theme of tortured artists, work together perfectly, creating a video that feels like an extension of the album's storytelling. It doesn't literally follow the plot laid out in the lyrics, but it captures the mood and broader themes of Fortnight and TTPD as a whole. The video portrays Taylor's character as a tortured poet herself, a woman driven mad by love, typing frantically at her typewriter, trapped by these doctors, maybe representing society or even her own inner demons, who are trying to medicate the art and passion right out of her. Meanwhile, her mind drifts off to memories of her lover, Post Malone, and the life they wished for, lying together reading the Us book. Everything's presented symbolically and non-linearly, almost like a series of vivid paintings or surreal dream sequences. By the end of the video, you really feel like you've watched the psychological breakdown of the Fortnight narrator more than the literal events. And honestly, that adds a whole new dimension to the song. It suggests the true story of Fortnight might be about completely losing oneself to an all-consuming love and heartbreak. The outward narrative, the affair, is just one layer. Beneath the surface, it's about intense mental turmoil, and maybe even commentary on how women's emotions often get dismissed as hysteria, hence the symbolic locking up imagery. All right then, that's about it for this video. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you taking this deep dive with me. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more breakdowns like this, and please drop your thoughts down below in the comments. Did I miss anything? Do you have your own theories or interpretations? I'd honestly love to hear what you think. And I'll catch you in the next one.